is recruit a task force to handle this issue. This task force will include municipal, federal, and provincial politicians. But here's the thing. I would handpick these individuals so that they have passion for resolving issues in community, so that they have closely related experiences, and if we can find politicians that look and reflect community, that's even better. Second, we would enhance the programs that are available in the community and make sure that they are enriched, and we would actually review policy around those things and make sure that those folks are getting those needs met. And lastly, on this task force, we got to involve people from those communities, the ones who are suffering the most, the ones who are impacted by homelessness and are faced with living on the street. They should be at the table as well. Their voices are going to provide us with the opportunity to tackle those issues. Thank you.
Pam.
Thank you for the question. Homelessness has always been on the forefront of HRM and in our communities. In fact, since 2015, homelessness has increased by 500% in this municipality. And as someone standing here before you who lived unhoused as a young person, I can tell you that the most important thing to know is what the people who are living unhoused are actually experiencing, which is why when I joined council in 2020, I initiated the creation of a lived advisory committee. And that lived experience advisory was able to come to council through staff to explain to council what the impact was and many negative impacts of some of the policies that council and the provincial government and the federal government were creating on the lives of those people who were suffering without shelter. And in addition to that, as a councillor, I moved very quickly to create a memorandum of understanding between the municipality and the province. So we had a delineation of tasks, responsibilities, and we could ensure that we were holding each other accountable and that we were able to make transparent decisions and in the best interest of those people who are living unhoused. And for the first time since the federal government abdicated their responsibility to support emergency shelters and people living unhoused in this country, we're actually seeing a drop now of people who are living in tents. And that's good news, because for the first time, we've got a wonderful partnership between the provincial government and the municipality. And finally, I would just like to add that when people are living unhoused, the most important thing to remember is their constitutional right through Section 7 of the Charter on Rights and Freedom. And that's why I voted against moving people and treating them like cattle.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Wei.
Geez, there's a risk this could turn into a tag team, but certainly when I talk to my colleagues across the country, the scale of this tremendous increase in homeless from coast to coast has been something we're all talking about all the time. I worry my own adult children won't have anywhere to live. It's a real issue right now with the kind of issues that we're facing. This housing crisis is real, and living in a tent is something I think more of our neighbors are afraid of living in a tent. They're one paycheck away from living in a tent than they are of seeing people in parks in a tent. And let's remember, and this is the most important part, allowing tents and encampments doesn't create homeless people. Homelessness creates homeless people. And if you have nowhere to go, a tent is your worst option. You don't want to go there, but that's what you're forced into. Any politician who tells you they will ban encampments and ban tenting with no clear plan to immediately house those people is being needlessly cruel. That is not what we want to do as a community. We want to support our most vulnerable neighbors. Those of us on the front lines of this national housing crisis, like Pam and myself and my regional council colleagues, have been putting extraordinary and unexpected measures in place to mitigate the impact of having this sudden influx of homeless people. We are paying for more staff. We are providing survival supplies. We are funding emergency shelters. We are making sure people in a tent or encampment have somewhere to use a washroom, water, hand washing stations. We are supporting the province in doing their job in building and operating housing and shelter. Recently, things have gotten a lot better. Brendan McGuire, as the minister, has been excellent. We have started to have coordinated access calls on Wednesday morning that the province leads with all major service providers, HRM, and outreach workers. We are doing all the intensive case management work that needs to be done. We know who are in those tents now, and they are getting individual plans to address their needs and get them out of tents into shelter and housing. A plan to ban new encampments, force overloads on existing encampments, to provide that insecurity to vulnerable people.
Thank you, Wayne. Riley.
Now, we don't have to reinvent the wheel with this. We can learn a lot from other cities and municipalities across North America. We can look to Portland, Oregon, where they work with all levels of government and various local organizations to provide resources. One of the challenges in both Portland and Halifax is the fragmentation of services. Nonprofits and government departments may provide similar services, but in an uncoordinated way, leading to gaps or duplication. Halifax could create a centralized system or task force to coordinate efforts between these different nonprofits and government agencies. This would allow for a streamlined approach where all organizations work together under a unified strategy, sharing data and resources to ensure that services such as housing, healthcare, and job training reach those who need them most. In Portland, government works closely with nonprofit organizations that specialize in homelessness, housing, and social services. The nonprofits often have on-the-ground experience and direct communication with people living on or near the streets. Halifax can establish formal partnerships with local nonprofits using their expertise to develop programs tailored to the community's specific needs. For example, nonprofits can run housing programs, addiction services, and mental health support, while government can provide funding, policy backing, and logistical support. Nonprofits are often more agile and able to pilot innovative programs to meet emerging needs quickly, and they can experiment with new approaches like rapid rehousing or transitional housing models. And if successful, these programs can be scaled up with government support. Government can fund or provide grants to nonprofits to pilot innovative solutions. For example, again, a nonprofit might experiment with modular or tiny homes as a short-term housing solution, and if successful, the government can provide land or additional funding to expand these programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Riley. Ross.
Let's try this again. I'll stick to the script this time. So, to answer your question for community engagement, we have a lot of brilliant minds in this city, and we are not utilizing them. We have a lot of bloated documents. We have a lot of plans and quote-unquote solutions, but we need to hear from people who've lived in these encampments, people who've worked with people who understand the problems and what we need to do to fix these. We can have cross-lateral and vertical communication to get these agencies working together. I don't want to discredit what this beautiful church and these other organizations have done. There's a lot of work that we can do and a lot of work to be done. We're on the right track, but we need more action, and we need it sooner than later. This is a beautiful city with a lot of potential, and I know that we can capitalize on this. We could use more liaison officers and more community engagement to have actual communication, to get actual goals with measurable, attainable goals with real results. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, there's an opportunity for one rebuttal per candidate for a 1-minute reply. If you wish, just move to the microphone, and if not, we will move on. Okay. Stephen.
So for our second and third question, we'll change the start just a little bit. For the second question, we're just going to go 2 down. So Daryl, you will start, we'll go that way. And for the third question, Wayne, you will start. And so that we just make it a little fairer so that Andy doesn't necessarily get the first word, he doesn't necessarily get the last word. Okay. The issue of homelessness is at the forefront. That's the first question. Second question. The municipality is responsible for establishing and operating various encampments throughout the city. There are 3 shelters within 3 kilometers of the downtown and several encampments. Food banks, including Christchurch Food Bank and North Dartmouth Outreach Resource Center and Margaret's House, have seen a dramatic increase in the number of those seeking food. How will you ensure these groups receive the support they need to continue to feed those in need? And so we will start with Daryl.
First, let me say this. I worked in this community as a community specialist with the Alderney Gate Library. And my role while working in that position was to engage in community such as this. One of the things that I did in that role was provide free meals. I actually got these hands dirty serving community, which I enjoyed because, like I said, I'm very passionate about it. So we offered a breakfast program, a free lunch program, and an evening program. The evening program, I didn't do the cooking, but I definitely delivered it to people who were experiencing home security issues, food security issues. The free lunch program, I helped make the sandwiches and provided those to people who were, in this community facing those issues. And of course, our breakfast program, which I ran, we had folks coming in off the street. We offered them a tea and a coffee, a piece of fruit, and sometimes overnight oats. The point that I'm getting at is that when you're on the ground, what I call boots on the ground, and you're working with community in an effective way, you gain valuable experiences. You have opportunity to engage with people from the experience in those issues. So if you look around on the stage, you'll see a lot of my friends, they have notes. I'm speaking from passion and from experience. And that experience is valuable as a leader. And if I'm elected mayor, I'm going to ensure that these programs continue to thrive, that they're well funded, and that we have the resources to make sure.
Pam.
Thank you for this question. So as a teenager, I went to the food bank. I was living unhoused, and I recall the very first time I walked in. I was ashamed. I felt horrible that I had to go to a food bank. Well, fast forward 20 years, I was on the St. Margaret's Bay Food Bank board. I was ensuring that more and more people didn't feel ashamed to ask for help, to go to the food bank. And when we create a culture of kindness and a culture of care, we embrace one another to create that positive change that we need. We know that volunteers are burnt out. There's only so much that people can do when the weight of the crisis is great. But when we do work hard to lift each other up and to support one another, more volunteers feel welcome. More people who use the food bank feel welcome. And we end up changing that stigma around how it is that people find themselves asking for help, because so many of us are so close to that edge. And when we look to all of those organizations who are doing this incredible work, too many of them are doing it in a silo and alone. And so it is incumbent upon government, whether it's municipal, federal, provincial, to be actually to work together to create and strengthen that network for the common good, while at the same time addressing the systemic changes that are needed to stop people from falling into the cracks and dealing with food insecurity and struggling with poverty and energy poverty. So these are the kinds of things as mayor that I will be working on, not just the reactive decisions, but being proactive. Thank you.
Wayne?
So on the campaign trail about 4 weeks ago, we went to the Halifax West Ecumenical Food Bank, and we were there to meet the organizers and get a photo. And they were short 10 volunteers, and they had 170 families coming through, and we ended up spending 2.5 hours volunteering because we just couldn't bring ourselves to leave. The scale of the problem right now is like something we'd never seen, and they showed us the numbers, how they've grown over the last 4 years. In addition to that, as councillor for District 7, we have Spencer House, and you talk to the folks there on the board, and more people are coming to Spencer's House Senior Centre who can't even afford the $2 for the breakfast or $7 for the lunch. So we're seeing an increased crisis happening across all of society. HRM has a track record in trying to support these things, not technically in the municipal mandate, but I think really important. So we've done things like the mobile food market, which we launched in 2015, which brings food into food deserts around HRM where there aren't any grocery stores. And I think that's a model, thank you, that's a model for the kind of project that we need to be investing in and expanding. I was sad when council voted to not fund our component of the Just Food Action Plan. That's something that I promised in my platform too. I've intended that we would revisit that and look to fund that. But I also think that, the big thing the municipality can do is help provide space and support for the essential community partners who are delivering these services, who are struggling to keep the lights on during these inflationary times. So a big piece is to extend tax relief to folks who are renting instead of owning a space, and also to be looking to provide full tax relief to anyone who's providing municipal services. Right now, they only get 75 or 25% off. We should give them 100% off if they're doing things like feeding our community. Thank you.
Riley.
Now, these aren't just local issues. These are issues that our entire country is facing right now. And the plain solutions are to allocate more municipal resources and secure provincial and federal funding to help these organizations continue their work, encourage local businesses to contribute through food drives, financial donations, volunteer programs with tax incentives as a reward, create a platform to coordinate food and resource donations and ensure these organizations receive a steady supply of what they need most, and work closely with nonprofits to ensure that they have staffing, tools, and support necessary for their long-term success, reducing the reliance on emergency interventions. Aside from that, we need to strengthen our local food supply. I would love to see more community gardens, and because the bylaws allow for it, backyard hens, because of course downtown Halifax wouldn't be able to do this, but places like Eastern Passage, Cole Harbour, Sackville, really anywhere outside the inner core would allow for this. This would give fresh food access, strengthen community, promote sustainable living, and lower environmental footprints. It would offer hands-on learning about food production, responsibility, and sustainability. Well-maintained gardens beautify the neighborhood, and there are already bylaws, like I said, to take care of the cleanliness and noise control to prevent any issues with these backyard hens. Now, you would see more donations of fresh food for these from these community gardens, assuming people get on board with initiatives, and the municipality can help get this started through info sessions and workshops. Thank you.
Ross.
Thank you. I think the first priority we need to focus on is streamlining more permits for activities related to food events, and these teams, such as the Christchurch and Margaret House, have made leaps and bounds in providing a crucial service for those in need. They deserve the support of our government, and we need to provide that to them. We would also use our platform to support and advocate for these food drives. If we can't give you the money, we'll at least get you out there. We'll use our social media, our networking to bring attention to your organizations. We need to aim to provide funding to these food security programs and more initiatives such as community gardens, community pantries, ways to bring communities the nutrition that they need to thrive and build on. Thank you.
Andy.
Well, I think you're seeing an awful lot of agreement up here that this is a very serious issue. I'm glad to have noted that in February of this year, HRM approved Part B of the Just Food Action Plan. It endorsed the HRM Food Charter and joined the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. These are initiatives that I support, and HRM needs to be a part of the solutions when it comes to food insecurity. And I believe we need to reinforce the successes that we're already seeing here. I'm thinking right now of the mobile food market, and find ways to use more municipal land and more municipal facilities to support food initiatives like community garden plots and food markets and so on. We need to remove the policy barriers that exist in HRM that are helping to perpetuate the problem of food deserts. HRM is lucky to have independent grocers like Gateway Meat Market. They're a terrific independent business. They're offering affordable prices, but right now they're the exception, not the rule, and we have to work to change that and to make more offerings like that. Community engagement organizations, or rather community organizations like Hope Blooms and the Common Roots Urban Farm are also doing great work. In fact, folks may remember when Common Roots Urban Farm was on the old Queen Elizabeth High School site up until when the hospital had to expand. By the way, Daryl and I were classmates at QEH back in the day. Isn't that fun? My office, the MP office, helped to relocate Common Roots Urban Farm to the Baihai Park. And just last week, I was at the Fairview Farmers Market, bought 2 bags of lettuce, and when I asked where it was grown, the answer was the Baihai Common Roots Urban Farm. So that was a really nice full circle moment. I've heard a couple of the folks on the stage talk about volunteerism. I like the idea about encouraging more volunteerism. My daughter and I, for many years, served meals at Souls Harbor, worked in the food bank at St. Paul's Church in Spryfield, delivered food to Metro Turning Point, and anything we can do to encourage our community to reach out with their own sweat equity in that way is a really positive step forward as well. Thank you.
Nolan.
All right, so I've been kind of going under time here so far today, so I think I'm going to lead with a little story. This actually very directly relates to me. See, once upon a time, there was a single mother and 2 young boys. Those young boys were me and my brother. Every day when we got home, we didn't know whether we'd be eating a nice home-cooked meal or a box of macaroni and cheese. If there's anything I can relate to, it's food insecurity. I know how hard it is, and now that we're doing better, I know how easy it is to make more food in a small garden. If we work to organize community gardening, as mentioned before, and as well as that, just more space for this type of gardening and getting these volunteers on foot, getting the transportation on the ground, right? Getting this food around town. I think we're going to be in a much better situation. How can I ensure the groups receive the support they need? I'll be with them every step of the way. If there is nothing else that I care about, it is food security. You cannot raise children without food. Thank you.
Each of you now have an additional minute if you want to use it.
So, I know it seems like I came here pretty unprepared. I do have one thing written here. This is kind of directed toward you, actually, Andy. See, on June 5th, the NDP put forward a notion. They were calling for big grocers to lower prices on essential foods. As many, if not all, Liberal MPs voted, Andy voted against this. He also went on to block comments asking for him to explain his vote, and he claims to work across the aisle. Now, I know that this was a very partisan vote. I know that this motion was aimed at the Liberals and Conservatives, but if he's going to work across the aisle, he needs to put that aside. Thank you.
That's really good. No, it's important to have a healthy conversation about things like this. Opposition Day motions are complicated in the House of Commons. They're designed to divide and create the illusion of discord in the House of Commons, and that's what they do. And as you can see, this NDP motion was very effective. Often what happens is an opposition party will model an Opposition Day motion on legislation that's already underway by the government as a way to preempt the government getting that win, and that's what happened in this particular case. In the end, I think good work was done by all parties in the House on the question of food security and affordability. And I'm surprised to hear that anyone felt their comments were blocked. It's not a practice we undertake. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to use their minute? We will move to the third question. There is a call for Halifax to be a barrier-free city for people who face mobility challenges and to become a hub for active transportation by creating bike lanes, pedestrian-only streets, and opportunities like increased availability of the Access a Bus service. Our question is, how will you ensure that these goals are met and maintained in the future? And we'll begin with Wayne.
I had other words here, but I'm going to tell a different story. So Jerry Post is here, and Jerry Post was integral into rebooting how HRM looked at these things. And you know the story I'm going to tell is Jerry invited me and some of our workers in operations to come and try and cross Spring Garden Road at South Park about 10 or 11 years ago using his manually powered wheelchair. And at the end of it, after we all struggled to do that, because before the renovation went like this out of the gutter, I remember one of those gentlemen, I saw Trevor today, but one of those gentlemen, Konstantinos, had to sit down and have an emotional moment because he's like, I had no idea. So, you know, the reason that relates to this is because of your hard work and so many other people in the accessibility community, we have an act that commits us by 2030 to meet certain goals. There is some question about whether the province and a lot of private businesses and institutions will do that. As Mayoral, make sure HRM meets our commitment to do that. We absolutely have to be barrier-free by 2030. And we have to make sure that it's not just the physical space and it's not just doing things like the Cogswell being Rick Hansen certified. It's looking at every program and every deliverable that we do and having a lens for accessibility. So thank you for that work. On bike lanes, I believe in building bike lanes, and I think that we should build bike lanes. I think it's important to recognize that planning and then putting bike lanes in the ground can take a number of years, and we need to be brave and we need to continue to build them. We need to finish the regional center bike network, but we also need to have a suburban and rural plan, which is the Main Street plan that we're talking about, and that we need to go to the federal and provincial government to get funding like we did with the AAA in the regional center. We need to do the road safety strategy, absolutely. And we need to fix Accessibus to bring it back to accessibility, because Accessibus simply isn't serving its users as it intended. We keep making promises to fix it. We made some progress. We need to finish that journey. Thank you.
Riley.
We do need better infrastructure, like wider sidewalks, more ramps, better connected and well-maintained bike lanes, and regularly review and update city plans to reflect our changing needs. To expand Accessibus, we should work with transit authorities to ensure more frequent service and coverage in underserved areas so that nobody is left without reliable transportation. Pedestrian-only streets, especially in busy areas, do create safer environments, encourage walking, and make spaces more accessible for people with mobility issues. However, like we've seen with the pedestrian-oriented transit priority pilot project on Spring Garden, people want more communication and to be able to give their input. Because if we don't have buy-in from our residents, is it really for the greater good? Let's find a place that this makes sense and engage with the community to make the right decisions. We should establish a task force to guide ongoing improvements, ensuring HRM is meeting real needs of residents while having open communication with the public, and setting up a dedicated maintenance fund to ensure the infrastructure is regularly updated and maintained. On the topic of making things barrier-free, I would like to make government more accessible to our seniors and those without access to technology. Too often, these people can't participate in society because of this barrier, and I would propose physical forms at community locations, post offices, places like that, so that We can have resources dedicated to help walk people through the process. Our seniors need to be cared for with dignity, and they're too often left out of this conversation. Thank you.
Ross.
Accessibility. I will ensure that these needs are met by ensuring accessibility audits are being done on a semi-annual basis to not only monitor these ongoing projects, but also to make sure that we're maintaining the integrity of these spaces already equipped with these accessibility aids. I'm proud of what the Accessibus program has been able to do. I know people that have used it and have seen the benefits of it, but we need to do more for it. This is a great service that is needed by a lot of people in our communities. We need to have that available for those who need it when they need it. Halifax is also a pedestrian central city, and we have a responsibility to our pedestrians and our citizens to ensure everyone can safely commute together through our beautiful cities. Thank you.
Andy.
Thank you. Well, when you're a city planner, you have to put accessibility at the heart of everything that you do, everything that you build. I began my career after graduating from Dalhousie here in the United States, where I learned a lot interacting with something called the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, that was adopted there many, many, many years ago. And it guides the way that, that things are designed. Communities and buildings and other things are designed for full accessibility. When I returned to Halifax to come to work at the planning department here at HRM, I realized that we were actually quite a bit behind the United States on matters of accessibility. It was only in 2017 when the Nova Scotia Accessibility Act was passed, and 2019 when the Federal Accessible Canada Act was passed, which will improve things in Canada, giving direction around amending building codes and other design and engineering standards. Municipally, we have a lot of work to do. The municipal levers on the issue have to do mostly with how we build things and how we help people move around and how we operate the city. On building things, it's really important that we build things like municipal facilities, sidewalks, curb cuts at intersections with accessibility front of mind. And that means revising and making necessary amendments to the Municipal Red Book, which is the engineering guidebook for such standards. On moving people around, it means improving Accessibus and listening to the users and acting on what we hear. And on operations, I just want to remember a friend of many people in the room here who became kind of famous on the internet locally, and I think it was the winter of 2019 or 2020. I don't have permission from him to use his name, but he is in a wheelchair, and at the intersection of Spring Garden Road and South Park, he, in his wheelchair with a snow shovel, had to clear the curb cuts for himself to be able to move up and down the municipal sidewalk. So we must do better on municipal operations as well, keeping our sidewalks and routes accessible for all. Thank you.
Roland.
Quickly following up on sidewalks, obviously we have an issue getting them plowed around here. Same thing goes for any of our bike routes and pretty much anywhere that you need wheels that isn't on the road. Not to discount the road for that matter either. Now, snow clearing is entirely on municipal streets governed by municipal government, so that falls well within our jurisdiction. Obviously, I'm physically able, so I can walk through a snowbank. That's fine. I'm 23 years old. I can handle it. But there's many people that can't. There's many people in this room that can't, and we need to work better for them. Something I find is that a lot of our plans that we have out right now, specifically the Integrated Mobility Plan, while they're good plans, they've been around for a long time and they've been delayed. Now, every time I hear Integrated Mobility Plan, it's like this grading thing that has been like in the works for so long. The thing that I want to do is I want to rebrand the Integrated Mobility Plan. I want to put a new face on it so people can get excited about it again. I think everybody working on it has lost their steam. I think a lot of people are tired of hearing about it. So just as far as giving it a new name, giving it updated statistics, and just putting it to council again to remind everybody that, hey, we're working on this. Thank you.
Daryl.
not sure how much consultation has been done in council, but one of the things I would do is, again, collaborate with the folks that we're talking about, the accessibility community, the biking coalition, and others to come together so that we can come up with a concrete plan of how to improve our barrier, or our issues with barrier-free. We want to be able to have low curb cut issues with concrete. We want to make sure that we have a barrier-free ramps so that folks can actually access themselves and get into buildings. And we all know we have harsh winters and we have a lot of snowfall. And we are challenged by removing that snow. And I've seen a lot of complaints just in my community about people not being able to access the roads or the sidewalks because there's too much snow. So those things need to be studied. We need to find ways to improve on all those issues so that our citizens are able to move free without any barriers. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Pam.
Thank you so much for this question, and I just want to also give a shout out to Jerry. It's great to see you here today. I am going to spend quite a bit of time of my 2 minutes speaking about persons with disabilities. People with disabilities make up 30% of our population. But when you consider the amount of budget that municipalities or even provincial and federal government put towards supporting people to live in a barrier-free society, it's too small. We need to be able to change how we consider ways to budget, but able to find ways to actually work with community members who are asking for our support. So HRM does have a task force. We have an accessibility strategy task force. We have an incredible accessibility strategy that we worked really hard with community to develop, and those recommendations are being put forward and implemented with community, which is extremely important. That being said, we need more money. We need to prioritize getting that work done. And while the question does point to HRM being a city, we are a capital region made up of over 200 communities. And again, everyone living with a disability in those communities has the right to equitable service. So within that accessibility strategy, we focused on really important things like access to programs, access to recreational program and services, making sure that we're creating standards across the board with all that we do, thinking about ways that we can communicate in a much more transparent way and support the work of our Accessibility Advisory Committee, which is an incredible group. But also from a perspective of Vision Zero, thinking about what does it mean for someone in a wheelchair or a walker to cross a street, a busy street on a crosswalk, when that traffic light is actually telling them, no, you can't go, you don't have enough time. So I think it's really about taking a new lens for what it is that we can do to create a much more inclusive and equitable community and look at ways that people with disabilities have a
Each of you have an additional minute if you would like to use it.
I'll take the time. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about with regards to accessibility is the importance of having active transit and active transit lanes, but also looking at ways that we can create open streets so people can mill about and feel comfortable and feel safe. Because I keep hearing from residents that they don't feel safe. And remember that over 50% of the roads in our municipality is owned by the provincial government. And they have very, very different standards as far as those residential roads. And when we look at the different in the standards, that's where we see the inequity within those communities, because you've got a rural residential community like Hubbard's, which is begging to have safe way for children to actually walk to the school, and then you've got sidewalks downtown and in the urban areas and the suburban areas, which people are safe and families feel safe to send their children to school. So from an equity position. I really do believe as mayor, that's going to be right above my door. Equity and inclusivity and diversity is important.
Anyone else would like to take their additional minute? Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we're going to move into closing statements for the candidates, and we're going to... I don't think we can do that because the guidelines were already given to the candidates beforehand. So we've given them time to mix and mingle about following the last closing statement. We're going to move to the closing statements now, and they can speak specifically to issues. We're going to start with Ray, and then we're going to move down to Ross, and then we're going to go to Andy and end with Daryl.
We're booing reverends in a church. I don't know. I'd do questions afterwards. We can all gather at the front. We could do that. So I guess what I would say, this actually goes right into the notes that I made for myself, because that's how I think, is let's remember the human, right? Let's be kind, compassionate, and empathetic at all times. A really good friend of mine says her number one lens when she wakes up every morning at how she looks at the world is, I want to do no harm. I want to do no harm. And so when you're talking about municipal government, sometimes it's hard and brave to actually move you toward that place where you're doing no harm. And an example is what has happened in the city around homelessness since August 18th, right? We paid for, as a city, for an independent report. We also, of course, have the federal advocates report on homelessness and encampments. And those reports both tell us what we need to do to maintain a fair and dignified human rights approach to these issues. And if we want to do no harm, that means that we have to put up with the temporary inconvenience of people being in tents and encampments while the housing is being built by the province. And something I didn't have time to get to in the previous 2 minutes is we've had 500 units come in the last couple of months. There's 300 coming before December, and the province promises 300 more in the spring, fall, and then more to follow. So we're on a path to house people with adequate supports, with proper wraparound services if required. We now know, for example, on University Avenue, most of them are low acuity, can go anywhere. They can go into any housing. I also want to point out that when we're talking about the speed of building market housing, and amazing things happened in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, we had 1,950 units under construction. Right now, there's 8,500 under construction. You can see the cranes all around the McDonald Bridge. So we have turned the corner on that. What we need to do is keep moving forward and getting both market and below market housing, affordable housing, built as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
When you look at me and hear what I'm saying, I hope you see a friend, your brother, your nephew, your son, somebody who's standing up for positive change and who shares your struggles and wants better for everyone around us. I'm not here for ego or for money. I'm here for you and to be your voice, because too often we're left out of this conversation. As your mayor, I will not let this happen any longer. Communication, transparency, and accountability are on the ballot. I walk the same streets, share the same dreams, and face the same issues as all of you. I live in your community. I drive an average car. I pay too much for rent, for groceries, and just to live. I recently got married, and we want to start a family, but I can't in good conscience bring a child into this world burdened by our issues. I want to make our city work for us and not just for those at the top. I left my career that I worked hard for day and night so that I can work for you. Being an elected official is the only job where the public does the hiring. I'm asking you, please, HRM, hire Riley Murphy. HRM, hire Riley Murphy. Let's put an end to this cycle and put one of our own in office, because I'll be a strong leader to unite us and build stronger communities. We deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Riley. Ross.
Well, what I failed to mention in my opening statement is I've worked provincially. I've worked for our universities, one of which was fantastic, and I've worked in our construction industry. I've seen what we're capable of doing in our province and especially in our city. And I know that we can approach this homelessness crisis with a warm, compassionate hand to help our friends get back on their feet. We need infrastructure and a better transit system. All of these, it's one hand washing the other. If we can help each other, we can help the system, we can help what we're driving on with what we're driving. Small businesses need our support. We have a lot of people coming in. That's a lot of money that can be spent going back into our economy, stimulating our economy, giving people jobs and things to buy, including housing. We need to make that housing affordable. And we have, like I said earlier, brilliant minds, brilliant resources. We just need to use them, and we need to start using them now. Our educational system, we've incredible professors, teachers, support staff, but they need our support so they can do their jobs to the best of their ability. I see a lot of wonderful candidates up here with me. I know we can all achieve the same goal. We want a better Halifax. We want a better future for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. And Andy.
Well, first, big thanks to Grace United Church and the Downtown Dartmouth Business Commission for making today happen. A lot of gratitude to both of those organizations, and a lot of gratitude to everybody in the audience today for taking time on a beautiful Saturday afternoon to give us your time and your attention and your thoughtfulness. I also want to thank the other candidates that are on the stage and the others that are not on the stage today for all of their hard work, for their thoughtfulness today. We're all here for the same reason. We're here because we care very deeply about the place that we live and we want to do better. So I honor them for that. This afternoon, we talked about the future of our municipality. And as I said during my opening statement, I believe that the future has never been brighter than it is right now for HRM. As one of Canada's fastest growing cities and most vibrant municipalities, we need to respond to the challenges of this growth that we're experiencing with urgency, with collaboration, and with resolve. Housing is not a luxury, it's a necessity, and we must get a handle on homelessness. Every citizen deserves a roof over their head, and pitching more tents is not the answer. We have to break down the barriers that are preventing us from building homes faster and cheaper, and we can deliver a transit system that people can rely on. All of this will take vision and it will take leadership. I'm a city planner and I've learned in my career what works and what doesn't. Now, the next mayor will have to work with all levels of government, the private sector and nonprofits. The next mayor will have to be collaborative and willing to make some tough decisions, even if they're not popular. And the next mayor will have to take charge of our future and make sure that it works for everyone. I'm ready to meet this moment and be your next mayor. Thank you very much.
Nolan.
I'd like to start. I hear the call for not having anything scripted. So just for the record, all I'm holding is the program for today. So I guess what I want to get across right now to everybody is that the mayor is not an executive position in Halifax, right? Anything executive is done through the CAO, and what the mayor does is they work with council to direct staff in which way they need to go. Obviously, there is a lot more to it than that, and a lot of that is existing political connections. I don't have those. I am 23 years old. I turn wrenches for a living. I think everybody can tell by looking at me, I don't have the connections that these three have, right? What I want to say to all of you is we all live together, right? When we work together, we can get Halifax where it needs to be. We can work with other cities, other provinces, and the feds, everybody, to get us in a better place. And if nothing else, I'd like to offer you a value proposition. Right now, the mayor is taking home nearly $200,000 a year. I don't need that. I'm making about 50 right now. I'm happy making 50 for 4 more years. That's all. Thank you.
Daryl.
In my closing statement, I want to say this. It is clear that I'm not the politician with experience. I am driven by passion within the community. I'm driven by the skill set that I have to offer people in various walks of life. I come from an area with low income, and I know far too often the crisis that we are facing with affordable housing. So this issue alone, along with the homeless issue, is driving me to be a force and to use my platform to help folks in need. That's what I know, that's what I've done all my life, and as your mayor, that's what I want to continue to do. We need more people on the ground that understand the issues that impact our communities. And we need to lift people up with that experience. If we continue to do the same thing that we've done in the past, and what I'm referring to is, and this is not a knock against Mayor Savage, but he's come into that chair with federal liberal experience, and now we have his friend who wants to do the same, coming in with a federal liberal experience. I think it's time for a change. I think it's time for a change that we have a leadership that looks through the lenses from a different view and has a different understanding of how to bring people together and bridge those gaps amongst our community. We have a thriving municipality, and we want to continue to thrive on that.
Thank you,
Thank
Daryl.
you.
Pam.
Thank you so much. This has been a really wonderful, wonderful day. I really appreciate the opportunity. I don't have notes. I always speak from the heart. In fact, it was Jeff Regan and Mike Savage that both said to me, don't read the notes. Just speak from your heart. And I'm willing to talk to anybody, anywhere, about anything at any time. Happy to do that. Happy to engage in a respectful conversation. What I think is really important for all of you to recognize is that I'm not like the others. So I'm not a career politician like some of those on this stage and those who are not on this stage. But I do have a vision. And I have a vision that I think you would appreciate. So my vision is to actually transform Halifax Transit into a capital region transportation commission by working in partnership with the neighboring municipalities and the provincial government that are sending in tens of thousands of people in single occupancy vehicles, creating massive congestion on our streets that's actually creating this gridlock, which is stopping people from getting to work on time, stopping people from being able to pick up their kids on time. And it's really killing our productivity within the municipality. So much so that we're now losing major international shipping lines who are going to the port of St. John. That's going to have a devastating impact for those workers at our port. That's really important for us to consider because the Windsor Street Exchange project is coming up. In addition to that, we know that the McKay Bridge rehabilitation has to take place. So we need a better plan now, and I have been advocating for the harbor plan. And I will say a harbor plan will create a concrete vision for the future with all stakeholders so that we don't have the conflict like we're seeing right now in Dartmouth Cove. And I will commit that as mayor, I'm going to hire Nolan Greeno because he's an amazing guy. So I want to say thank you so much, and I appreciate this. Merci. Walaliag.
Thank you, Pam. That concludes the debate portion of today. At this time, as we close, we encourage people to stay behind and ask specific questions to the candidates. So kind of spread out if you wish, make yourselves comfortable and ask those questions. I want to thank Tim Rosesko of the Downtown Dartmouth Business Commission, and also Stephen Fram and members of Grace United. Thank you, everybody. No.